got to come up with words for this. I say that every week, but
I can't hear the music.
you guys aren't getting the music?
Nope.
All right, hang on. How's that?
Barely. I hear something.
All right, well, I just switched it. Let's see this.
Yep.
I hear that.
All right, good. Yeah, that was it. Sorry about took a second to cut over. I had a mic issue that, of course, right before the show, you pop your mic out and it undoes all of your settings, and we'll get to that in our Old and the Way Tech Talk, which is another show we'll do sometime. Welcome to episode 19. Mike, Scott, how are you guys?
I'm good. Very good.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Scott, how'd
Good.
the bunk go this morning? I know you had a project.
I've been in full construction mode. You know, I'm a software developer, so I have very little skill when it comes to construction. But putting together a little downstairs sleepover space for my kid.
Yeah, that reminds me. I'm glad you mentioned that. You're a knowledge worker and you have very little construction skill, because I didn't make it to your house on the Sturgis trip. I was unable to make the joke that it would be nice for Jen and Emma to have a man around the house for a while. But since
Yeah.
I thought of it a few weeks ago, I didn't get the chance to use it, so I hope you don't mind. I had to break that out this morning. But Mike, what's new and exciting in New York? How's the weather out there? I'm genuinely curious to know if it's raining or sweltery today. What'd you guys get? Both?
We had a couple of storms a few days ago, and then we had a really big storm last night.
Oh yeah.
Blew through a lot of heavy rain, lightning. I didn't hear any thunder, but it was a real light show in the sky for a couple
cool.
hours.
Oh,
I missed
man, I'm
that.
jealous.
Yeah.
I could really go for that.
Yeah, I
But
got.
I can tell you, I drained my pool. I'm having my liner replaced Tuesday, so I pumped all the water out of the pool. And between the two storms we had like 4 or 5 days ago and this storm last night, I have 5 inches of water in my pool now.
Holy shit!
I have to go back and pump the water out again.
Oh. I
Yeah.
would. You have like the mother of all slip and slide opportunities too, because your house is like set on the side of a hill. So if you could have just let that baby go, let the liner go with it,
Yeah.
that would have been perfect.
So-
Your neighbors down next door probably would have not cared for that as much, though. But nevertheless. So, well, Carlos is not able to make it today, folks. The sensei is at his annual Harley Owners Group Hog Party. So cheers to the NYC Hog chapter. I hope they're having a good time. And I'm sure there's a lot of sugar-free and health foods being conserved by that group from what I've seen in the pictures. But I'm guessing they're having a good time. So kudos to them. Eddie's still on the road. Sturgis looks like she made it. I saw some pictures. Yeah. I'd like to see some more, but it looked like, I've seen a lot of stuff in general on social media from everybody that's up there. But it looks like she made it. It's like to see that she got there. Can't wait to hear more stories. She hasn't, I sent her a note and asked for, hopefully we can get some more updates. So we'll see what she has to say. But Eddie's on the road. Carlos is at a picnic. Couple of other, before we jump into our topic du jour, American Rest Stop. And I've been waiting to talk about this one for a while, my love affair with rest stops. Couple of interesting things this week. So on the custom motorcycle side, I go to a party this week, 50th birthday, surprise 50th birthday for a friend, plop down at a table. I end up sitting across from two people, husband and wife, custom motorcycle, custom painters and fabricators. So Lightning Strike Customs is Rich and Marciella Smith, I believe, was their last name. Stephen Rich and Marciella Rich. Sorry about that. So I chewed their ear off. And hopefully vice versa for a few hours. I'm like, I just had a custom tank done. Where were you a year ago? I wish I would have met them. But really cool people, and I'm hoping to get them to come on the show. I haven't asked them yet, but I feel like I'm kind of like dating. It's like, all right, I just met them the other night. So
yeah, be cool.
Yeah, I follow them on Instagram. I'll wait a couple days before I email them. But Marciella we were talking, and she really drilled me about like what paint and design and stuff. Like, what is your really interesting views on like how you create a bike. And she's got a custom Wonder Woman bike that she did. That's like, it was really interesting talking to them. So I'll see if we can get them on. That was Lightning Strike Customs. In other news, Larry and I have been riding around, and not to be, I didn't, Larry, I'm not naive. I know if you see a dog on the back of a motorcycle, it gets people's attention. So we get lots of attention from folks on the road, and I'm starting to meet some other people that ride with dogs. So we're going to do an episode about riding with pets, but I'm going to try to get some folks on, and I've met a few people online. So hopefully, I can pop the question to them too. And it was funny yesterday. I rode by. I went up to Del Mar yesterday, and I rode by from a stop. A freaking fly in my face. I rode by from a stop, and I saw this other guy with a dog strapped to his chest. And as I rode by, I was like, "Hey!" It was like that Spider-Man meme, that you see online, where the two guys pointing at each other.
Yeah.
But we're out there, so definitely want to get.
If you meet a couple more, you could have a meetup, and you can call it Hog Dog.
Hog dog. Yeah, that's a. Yeah, I was thinking about that. And actually, I have to go back through my conversation history with Carlos, but we came up with a half a dozen or more names for potential dog-based motorcycle clubs. So you will revisit that in a future episode. One other housekeeping item. Have you guys? I know, Newman, I've chewed your ear off. Mike, I sent you a couple pictures. I've fallen down the rabbit hole of trying to put two-stroke motors on pedal bikes, because we've got a pile of pedal bikes, and two-stroke motors are easy to obtain. And we started with this custom chopper, the one I sent you that we bought for Wyatt. So I'm in the process of tearing the existing motor on it that that came with. It's cheap Chinese steel, and long story short, little torque problem, like tore it right off the frame and broke the U-bolts in the engine block. So I've got a lesson learned, but I'm having a blast learning about gas powered engines in ways I hadn't planned on, by taking these things apart and putting them back together. So more to come on that. But I've got I took the 60cc off Wyatt's bike, and I successfully mounted the 100cc on Friday, got the chain on, so I just have to connect the clutch and etc. Hopefully we'll get that test driven by tomorrow. So more to come. Our first bike project is underway.
Good thing you met some fabricators, so
yeah,
they can fix all your mistakes.
Yeah, and not only did I meet this couple that does art and paint work, but my neighbor across the street, who I've known as long as I've lived here, he's retired. I knew he was involved in metal work. He's got a full service metal shop, does fabrication and everything. So I have I was talking to his wife yesterday and said, I need to sit down with your husband, because I have a couple things that I need, even small stuff. Like if I wanted to make a new engine mount bracket, you need something that's going to fit the exact size and stuff like that. But you can't go to Home Depot and eyeball it and hope that you get it. So
yeah, or a lot of duct tape.
I have a lot of duct tape. I have tried that as well. But what I'm learning about engines and machine parts is that you really can't flub your way through it. You really can't Band-Aid.
It's not like making furniture out of PVC. Like this is a little more substantial.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what? Easy way to do that, if you have to make some specialized bracket, is take a piece of cardboard and measure it out, cut it out so it's exactly what you want in cardboard, then give it to the person instead of trying to do measurements and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Well, let me ask you, that's probably something too I would think of. I need to get I told Liz the other day, I'm like, I need a welder, or whatever that is. I need one. But that's another.
You should probably learn what it's
called. Evidence that you might not be ready. Give me a welder. I just big tank with a fire torch on the end of it, and I can start. The guy I bought the bike from was like, you might want to hit this kickstand because it leans too much, and bend the kickstand. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll figure that out. But anyway, so more on motorbikes to come. I'm having a blast, and I'm finding. I posted about it a thread about this bike on the Harley forums, and a couple of guys there turned me on to some other people that build these bikes and go crazy. So more to come on that. All right, let's dive into the topic du jour, if we shall.
At the tone, the time will be 26 Railroad.
It's actually 19 past the hour, but 26 Railroad will do. Today we're talking about the American Rest Stop. And if I may, for a moment, kind of tee this up, the genesis of this episode is the multiple, we'll say, kind of moving, and I hate this, that sounds like emo kind of wimpy or whatever, like moving experiences I've had stopping on the highways and byways of America in recent months in various circumstances, and the cool experiences and people that you meet at rest stops. And it really hit me on my my failed Flagstaff, or my failed Sturgis ride, probably because of how desperate
No,
I was.
not failed.
Yes, that's
Attempted.
right. Yes, my amended trip, it
Mhm.
probably hit me the most there, because it was just, like you really need everything you can get at those rest stops, and we'll get into that in a minute. But what it dawned on me, and this is the theme that I wanted to share, is that I think the rest stop is really the last true equalizer. And if you think about it, like, unless you're like the 1% rich and you can fly everywhere or whatever, everybody has to drive or be driven, right? And for travel and ground transportation, and sooner or later, we all end up stopping at the rest stop. So whether you're, being chauffeur driven in a limo, or you're in the back of a station wagon, you're stopping at the same place to take a leak and get gas and food, etc. And it forces people into places where they wouldn't otherwise congregate. And it also, because you're limited to what's on and off the highway, it's not like you can choose to go to, I'm going to go to this place because I think it aligns with, some social value, or I know, there's going to be, I can go to this fancy restaurant because I know there won't be any bikers in there, or I can go to, whatever, you get the point. So everybody's forced to be in the same spot. And it's really one of the last true melting pots that we have. So, setting that as the stage, that was really what kind of hit me on my last big ride, and made it so that I wanted to sit down and chat about it. So before we get into this, what do you guys think? Does anything I just said, does that resonate with you, or do you guys have the same emotional or any emotional connection to rest stops, or is this just a me thing?
Well, it's a good place to get murdered.
It is, yes. Yeah. In one of the places I posted about today's episode, I said, if whether you're there to get food or you're looking for a toe-tapping good time with a stranger. And do you remember that Mike, that was like, I think up in New York, wasn't it? Where there was like that congressman who got caught, like, like having sexual dalliances in public restrooms, and he would like tap his foot on the floor, and it was
I don't know. I don't remember that.
there was a big that rest stop on
I do
684.
remember.
You know the one I'm talking about? There was like a huge.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do know there's a rest stop on 684 that they shut down for several weeks every once in a while because things get out of hand there, and they force people to
They should
move
charge
on
a
to other
cover.
places.
Well,
Yeah,
It's like Fire
yeah.
Island North.
I've sworn off rest
Yeah,
stops since I moved away from Florida.
Yeah.
There's one on I-75, the road that goes directly across Florida. They
Right.
call it Alligator Alley. If you're going from Tampa to Miami, you're taking that route. So you get about halfway across the state, boom, there's a rest stop in the middle of it. The issue is there's no air conditioning, obviously. This is not a Buc-ee's or something
Right.
here. This is a concrete thing with vending machines and shitters. And, 95 degrees with 98% humidity and nasty bathrooms. It's about as bad smelling as you could imagine.
Yes.
And but like you just said, when you gotta go, you gotta go. So
Yeah.
it's like, how long can I hold my breath? You know, just absolutely disgusting. But I think the rise of the modern mega convenience store, like your Buc-ee's and
Right.
and those similar things, maybe they're setting a new standard for. Maybe an alternative to a rest stop, because I'll go in one of those all day long. I mean,
Yeah.
you got beef jerky stands. I can get a muffin. I can get 1,800 different kinds of soda. I would do a tour of the country just to visit those stores at this point.
Yeah. There is definitely, and that's like
87 islands of gas.
It's crazy. And there are as a side note, this is a footnote to the story, or side note to the story. The mega truck stop rest area
truck stop. You're right. That's the right word. Yeah.
Which is, I think rest stop, but technically, they're marketed as, if you're talking about these big mega places, they're targeting truckers as their primary source, or their main audience, in the way that they're built, etc. Along with other travelers, of course. But that's like, they're starting to become like almost sort of the way that when, back in the 80s and 90s, when malls started to get larger and larger and larger, and it was kind of like, there's like that Mall of America kind of push with rest stops, and
Yeah.
Buc-ee's is one of them that does it. I think that the largest, I think, in the country is Pilot Flying J. So I noodled around a little bit on
Now
this.
that one seems more like an actual truck stop than something like a Buc-ee's.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
Or
yeah.
was it Love's or
I think
Lowe's?
those are-
Love's
I
is
think.
one. Yep.
Yep.
Well, I think they're separate, right? Isn't it Pilot and then Flying J and then Loves? Those are like the three bigger
Yeah.
truck stops.
I'm pretty sure that the Pilot, Love, TA is another one. Loves, they're all separate. And they all have like, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 plus locations around the country. So you're likely to run into them. I don't know if it's just my luck or whatever, but I have found mostly Loves to be the big large rest or gas stops, and there's also one called Terribles, which is an interesting choice of name. But that's and
That's what I look for in a bathroom.
yeah, and they're Love's a little bit less so, Terrible's a little bit more. So like they're starting to have almost like not a Pedro south of the border gimmick, but like they have their they're kind of putting their thumbprint on it. This is the style for it, and this is your rest stop experience. But we should clarify that, and I didn't do this in advance, but I think we could probably what's it called, Scott? What's it called when you classify different species into, like, you put them into like different categories? What's that?
Like a genus?
Yeah, something I think we could probably break it down.
It's a taxonomy.
Taxonomy, that's it. Yeah, so you could break it down into, there is, for purposes of our conversation, there are big mega, rest stop, truck stop, where places that you stop. There are, your smaller kind of highway rest stops where it's like a McDonald's and a bathroom and, and a couple of picnic tables. And then there's, the wild card, if you will, where you're actually getting off the highway, taking an exit, and you're going to a gas station or something small like that. That's, so you've ranging from like these mega mall size truck stops to smaller kind of mid range. And then you have like your off the highway. To me, there's like a question mark on that one. What are you going to get? I think you can kind of you can put most places you're going to wind up on a trip into those three buckets. At least that's the way I would think of it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So
when I drive to Texas several times.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I usually tell people the best places I like to stop are the big truck stops, like Pilot, Love. They're very clean. Bathrooms are clean. They have everything there. Usually I think some people are afraid because they hear truck stop and they think it's full of truckers.
Yeah.
And it's not like where you want to be walking around. But the fact is there are more non-truckers in the truck stops, I think, than there are truckers.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And even like the food choices, there's usually some kind of fast food chain tied to it, whether it's a Perkins or a chicken place or a pizza place. The state bathrooms, like state-run highway rest stop areas, can usually be okay, but again, vending machine only.
Yeah.
And usually, unfortunately, I usually like to give my business to the small guy, but a lot of these gas stations, like these loners off the ramp, and when you get off the highway, the only thing there, like sometimes their bathrooms are sorely lacking if they even if it's even working.
Yeah. We clean it once a month, whether it needs it or not.
Oh yeah. I mean,
but the other thing, Mike, is I'm afraid to use my credit card at places like that too, because it's pretty sketchy ass.
Yeah. I usually when I buy gas, I pay cash. I'm like a dinosaur that way.
Yeah.
I usually don't pay at the pump, and I usually just go in and I pay at the register. But
you're really rolling the dice with those. It every time I use my debit card at a place like that, it's like I think it's like a 20% chance I'm going to get my. How many? I mean, we've had it's happened enough times that you just expect it.
And then the other downside to the smaller gas stations that are off the highway, I don't like getting off the highway and having to drive like 3 miles to get to a gas station, especially in like late at night.
Yeah,
because you're not really sure. There's nothing there. And it's
Yeah.
like the GPS, like, well, there's a gas station down here. You get there and it's closed.
It's a
Yeah.
recipe for
Right.
anxiety. So on just to ask you on that point, I wanted when you said just interrupt you for a second, you talked about going back and forth to Texas. So give us an example. You said you don't want to get off the highway. So like before you leave for a trip like that, and as you're navigating it, like do you have like a rest strategy? Like I want to stop every so many hours. I want it to be this kind of place. Do you plan ahead? Like you just wing it? Like what's your
No.
approach?
No, I'll start. I like to leave really early in the morning. So when I stop in the evening, it's like 8 o'clock. It's not too late to get dinner, get some sleep.
Yep.
I usually try to do the bulk of my drive the first day because
Yeah.
it's like a 26-hour drive. So I'll do like 16 hours the first day and then 10 hours the second day. And the second day feels like half a day at work, right? It's like nothing after 16 hours.
Yeah.
But I don't like to make reservations at hotels ahead of time
Yep.
because one of the bad things about like when you drive with a lot of 2-lane roads, busy, quick, trucks everywhere. But when there's an accident, that road's closed.
Yeah.
Right. And the last thing you want to do is get stuck in a 4-hour traffic jam and still be 6 hours away from the hotel you made reservations in.
Yeah.
So now your 16-hour day just became a 20-hour day and you haven't even gotten to the hotel.
Yeah.
So I'll wait until I get to a big intersection, like exit where there's a lot of lights, usually there'll be a couple of restaurants, a couple of hotels. There's always the chains. And then I haven't had a problem getting a room yet,
Yeah.
for an overnight. I only had one like Freddy Krueger style bad experience, and that was like in a Red Roof Inn or something. Still a chain, but man, that was horrible.
Well,
What
not much
happened?
of a chain.
Yeah, so now I try to stay like at Hampton Inn or one of the bigger chains,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they emailed me and it's like, oh, how was your stay? And I sent them like this whole list of everything that was wrong. And their response was, oh, maybe next time you stay, it'll be better. I was like, fuck you.
Yeah,
I'm
maybe.
never staying there again.
Yeah.
I sleep in my car for 5 hours before I stayed in your hotel.
Yeah.
I've been a
Yeah,
hotel
La
snob.
Quinta is Spanish for I should have slept in the car.
Hey, you know what? La Quinta, I stayed at La Quinta and
They're much nicer now.
yeah, whatever it was, something about traveling by yourself on a motorcycle, it's such that like all I need is like a hot cot, or whatever in a place. And as long as there's no bugs, like, then, or any.
Oh, you've also stayed at the Drury Inn.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the
I see.
Drury. My God. Yeah. As long
Home
as
of the
there's no
damn carpet.
bugs or like unidentified liquids,
Exactly.
stains of a.
Yeah, well, that was this Red Roof Inn thing.
Yeah.
It was like
Exactly.
I have a very low bar.
Yeah.
I can be comfortable almost anywhere.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And after a while, I went down. I'm like, yeah, I want to know the room, or I'm gonna cancel my card on this room because there's no way. Right. I go in there and like the room stunk of cigarettes.
Oh.
Yeah,
right.
that's the worst.
Stale cigarettes. So I'm
That's
like,
a Drury,
I'll lay
that's
out
their-
the room. It's not that bad. And then the light doesn't work. I plug it in. It's like 8 cigarette butts put out on the lamp base on the floor. I look at the bed. There's burn holes from cigarettes in the comforter on top of the bed. The bathroom was graffiti, and inside the closet like frat house
Where
graffiti.
the hell did you stay? Jay, this
It
is the
was like a
problem with
Red Roof-
cash-only hotels here.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it was like a Red Roof Inn. It was a chain. It wasn't like a no-name place.
Yeah, I
right?
would.
As
I
seen
would
on
think.
Cops.
And
I would take a flyer on
some-
Red Roof,
some-
thinking they would be okay.
Somebody punched a hole in the bathroom door. The towels were all washed but dirty, right? Like stained. They couldn't
Yeah.
get the stains out.
Nice
They're like,
shit
"No, we're
stain
gonna
in the
keep
middle
it
of the
anyway."
towel. That's nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I pull a chair out. There's food in the chair. I'm not talking crumbs. I'm talking like chunks of food, right? And then I fold
Flotsam
the bed
and
down,
jetsam.
and it's the first time in my life I've ever stayed. Every single piece of linen on this bed was wrinkled, right? Pillowcases,
How is this
sheets,
possible?
everything. I'm like, all right. Did you like just pull it out of the dryer and throw it and hope that it was on the bed long enough to get flat?
The
Yeah.
dryer
Instead
if
of
you're
folding
lucky.
it when you
Yeah.
wash it? And then I forgot what else was there. Was a couple other things. I was like, man, I am done.
Where
So I
where
go down
was
there
it?
and
Just
like,
do you,
yeah, listen.
where was it geographically?
That was it was either at the end of Virginia, end of Tennessee or the beginning of Virginia.
All right, so somewhere down
Like
there. Yeah. That
Yeah,
could be
like I don't
anywhere.
remember
Yeah.
I see the exit as I drive by
Yeah.
because I'm mentally scarred.
Yeah.
But
I hear you. I was always a hotel snob, and I've been recently taking flyers on just about anything. If I can get a cheap rate, and I know that we're talking rest stops, but it is, you gotta, you're 100% right about like making reservations. I like to. I'm neurotic, so I like to try to have something locked in, and then like I'll move things around, and try to dodge penalties and stuff like that if I can. I have, like I said, I was always a hotel snob and big into loyalty, with Hilton and Marriott and these different like large chains. But I have found I've been using hotels.com lately. And the reason
Not a
why is
sponsor.
what's that? Yeah, no, no
Not a
sponsor, right?
sponsor, but we're for sale.
We are, yeah. It's just like the ease of having everything like aggregated. You can look on your phone and like with a click. So I had to do that on my last ride, like when I needed to find that La Quinta, and I booked a bunch of places through it. You can do campgrounds and other shit like that too. So it's definitely something worth checking out. But I like Baymont by Wyndham has been my new one. I've been hitting a few times. So shout out to the Baymont by Wyndham in Barstow. I stayed there twice. Excellent, really great staff, and appreciate the help there. But yeah,
But were the linens wrinkled?
everything was clean and normal.
There you
I'm
go.
talking about like
yeah.
you got to like
Actually, I was going to say one of the smaller hotels when I first did it was a Baymont,
yeah
and very reasonable price, and the
Yeah.
room was good. The room was clean.
yeah
I
free
had
breakfast.
no complaint staying there.
Yeah,
And that
everything was great. I had a really good. It's. I think with like the reality is, and here's what I know from having stayed literally hundreds of times, no exaggeration, in Hilton hotels and Hampton Inns, that you can pay $140 for a Hampton Inn, and you're going to be guaranteed a clean vanilla experience, more or less. You won't have like what you had at that Red Roof Inn.
Yeah, it's like a McDonald's hamburger. It's not going to be the best.
Right, but the product really, like the room that you're going to spend most of your time in, and if you're like me, you go to the room and you get takeout or lock the door behind you, whatever, that room is more or less going to be identical to what you get at the Quality Inn, to what you get at La Quinta, to what you get at Baymont. Yeah. So it's like, do I want to spend $89 on this, or do I want to spend $140 because the lobby is nicer at the Hampton Inn? So anyway, it's if you're trying to save a few bucks, it's definitely one way to go. I want to go back to something.
Yeah, get to the rest stops here.
Yeah, so back to the rest stop. Something Mike made a really good point before, and thank you for walking us through your approach using the Texas example and your style. You made a really good point about people associate truckers and truck stops together. Imagine that, but there's sort of like a negative kind of like like gross dudes wandering around looking for meth and prostitutes, right? That's kind of like I am by no means an expert on this, and I haven't traveled all the truck stops in the land, but I think it's safe to say, without touching off another kind of conversation that we don't want to get into, I think the demographics of the American trucker have changed since like the Conway Twitty era, to such that like they're like it's different. Like that's not what you see. Let's put it that way. Like most of the truckers that I encountered didn't look any different to me than somebody in an office building. So they're, and really, if I'd love to hear from other people what you think, but it's not like it's a very kind of regulated and metered job, so you see guys running around with headsets that look like they work in a call center that are running out from their truck to get something, and they're not just sitting around bullshit and catcalling people. It wasn't so. They're people working. So like I did kind of notice that, because I had a similar, like everybody, you got that kind of stereotype. But anyway, your mileage may vary, but I was surprised to see.
So you're talking about the rise of the corporate trucker.
Yeah, I'm also trying to delicately dance around. There are a lot of people coming from overseas that are doing trucking jobs that don't look like guys in flannel shirts with cat hats on. You know what I mean? Like they don't look like the trucker from Central Casting.
It's not Eastbound and Down.
Right, exactly. So like, and you see that, and it struck me as it's just an observation. It struck me as this workforce has shifted a little bit, and with it, what they want, and that may change a little bit too. So I thought that was an interesting point. I don't know, like I said, you guys, you may have a different experience, but I was surprised that it's maybe not like those of us who would grow up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s associate with truckers. So what do you think?
Well, I think that's fair. I mean, You're talking about more of like a fleet managed kind of trucker versus just a contract guy or gal who's going
Well,
to.
not so much. I mean, I think you got, when you're out there, you have like owner operators, and then you have people who work for the big companies and the shipping companies you recognize. I just think of it more of like who's doing those jobs. You know what I mean? You're starting to see, and this is again, I opened a whole can of worms, but driving a truck probably falls into and I hope I'm not saying this, or like the non-skilled labor sort of, like it doesn't take it's hard to become a truck driver as it is to become a machinist, for example. A machinist, you have to have a lot more training, and you have to have a lot, there's apprenticeships and stuff like that. So if it's easy for you to get like a call center job, for example, you start to see people who can't get other skilled jobs going into those things. So you're starting to see it's not this job where people are doing it for generations, et cetera. It's starting to have more of a transient workforce, maybe. So that's just my experience I trying to lay a corporate lens on it. But, anyway, I just thought it's not like go to a truck stop. It's not like a movie. It's not a Burt Reynolds movie,
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Oh no, they have everything there.
Yeah.
Actually, the funny thing is when you go to a truck stop and you'll hear like driver 27, your shower is ready.
Yeah. There are currently no lines for showers. Yeah.
They're waiting for the shower to come in. You'll see guys walking around, like if you go there late at night and they're wearing like a bathrobe and slippers.
Yeah.
And carrying a laptop, and they're waiting for the shower, to be clean so they can get into the shower. Or they're sitting at the table in the restaurant part using the Wi-Fi. They have washer machine and dryers in there so they can do their laundry and stuff like that. I've been in truck stop. They have chapels.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And on Sundays they'll have service.
Yeah.
And but the chapel is open. If you wanted to sit in the chapel and reflect, you could do that as well.
Yeah, I was amazed that. I mean, I knew the showering and some of the other services existed, but you hit the nail on the head. The first time I was standing there and I heard over the PA, like, trucker drivers, there are currently no wait for showers. Take a hot shower, blah blah. And I stood in the wrong line more than once when I realized I was standing in a line for truckers only. And they really do gear the larger rest stops around the trucker. Anything smaller than that, you're not going to see, I don't think, nearly the same level of customization usually, especially like the state stops. There's a little bit of like trucks versus cars, that kind of thing, but definitely was a big equalizer. And so not only I would say the takeaway from that, and one of the points I really wanted to make was, if you haven't been to a truck stop or a rest stop to see for yourself, go for a ride. And I don't need to be giving people advice, but check it out, see for yourself. And it is really good people watching, and you might find yourself mixed up in a part of the flow of our culture that you don't normally see. So if you're navigating this stuff on a bike, there's some definite tips and tricks I learned on my last ride that and a huge driver for me. And I'm curious, other thoughts. This is motorcycle specific, but it doesn't have to be in terms of what you'd get at a rest stop. For me, my biggest issue was the availability of resources, meaning gas and like water, and also the availability of shade. So on my last ride, I had to be able to find places where I could get gas, get water, and park myself and or the bike as well in shade for a period of time. And if I couldn't get my bike in the shade, could I at least get me and Larry in the shade? And those were really my needs. And I guess you would amend that by saying, and I had to have it like at least every 60 miles. If it was 80 miles or so, I would push it, but I didn't want to have to push Larry or myself harder than that in triple degree heat without a stop for water and to relax. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
What's that?
Once you go past that point of being able to bounce back from the heat, it takes a lot longer to recover.
Yeah.
So if you push it for an extra hour or whatever it is, and you've gone over the edge,
you'll pay
then
for
it could take you 4 or 5 hours to feel comfortable enough to be able to get back on the bike than it is if you stopped an hour ago and got some water and sat in the shade.
Yeah. And
Jay, when you say rest stop, I'm also thinking it brings up a different mental picture. Rest stop to me is just the pull off on the highway that has some parking spaces and like a brick shitter.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Then we got truck stop. And, there's a distinction in my mind. Is there a distinction
Yeah,
in yours?
I would say the rest stop is that mid-grade. Like, you may have gas there in a restaurant, but at best you're going to have a bathroom and a vending machine or a water fountain or something like that. That's your
place to walk the dog.
Yeah, place to get out, maybe a tree, a picnic table, something like that. But you may not, there's limited
hooker,
services, and they'll say that, like you'll see say get a hooker. So what do they call that? What's the trucker wear seat cover? So no, lot lizards. So they, that was like the bare minimum. But the one, if you're a new rider or somebody looking for, for whatever reason, advice, don't, and this is, again, your mileage may vary. Some people like to wing it, but know where there are stops along your route. Just about any map app that you use, Google Maps, Road Trippers, Rever, any of those will allow you to highlight, gas or lodging. Don't assume that there are places to stop or that they're open. Like, make sure if you have if you need to stop every 50 miles or 100 miles, look at a map before you go. And I found that to be, especially when you're traveling in the desert in places that are more desolate or remote, there's not a federal law that mandates be a gas station every 50 miles. So, and we are not a nanny state in the regard that you can drive off into the middle of nowhere and die if you want to. So, so know where there are.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah, exactly. Know where there are places to stop is definitely one. Another trick. This is not a trick necessarily, but in addition to knowing where to stop, if you're on a bike and it's hot or it's raining, which are two things that happen frequently, you need some kind of cover. So looking for places that are cover, scouting as you pull off the highway, trying to see where there's shade, knowing which direction the sun is going. Like, if you're as neurotic as me, this maybe sounds normal to you. It may sound crazy, but those were the things that I tried to do. And what I found was that if there was no shade or parking and picnic, that's a new word I just made up.
Parknick.
If there are no parknick areas, you may need to find something else. And what saved my life a ton of times was the space between the pump islands. Now, sometimes they'll be cluttered, like with a bunch of like garbage cans and stuff like that. But I often at the larger gas stations, there's space where you can park your bike and yourself, not be in anybody else's way, and still be under, the cover of the awning or whatever you want to call it. So that saved my ass on more than one occasion. I sat there as cars went back and forth on either side of us, me and Larry, drinking water and trying to recover. But that was definitely, if you need shade, a top find for me along the way. Inside.
Well, it wasn't busy there because everyone was like, what's that sketchy ass guy doing over here? Let's use a different pump.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I find, less so, I find it less so on the highway rest stop areas, but some of the smaller places you get off at, if you're on a motorcycle and you're heavily tattooed with long hair and you're kind of dressed like a pirate, people tend to go to the other side.
Like a wide berth.
Steer away from you. Like, and the dog helps kind of soften people up a little bit for me.
Yeah.
They're not as scared, but so on that, going back to shade, you know where your places are, know like how you can park and get yourself situated. There's different, where you can use the benefits of the building and the facility itself to grab cover if you need it. And follow on to that, I would say go inside. So Mike, I think you had said this, or Scott earlier, that there are places, you can go, you sit down and eat in these places. They have restaurants attached to them. Sometimes you may not have that. You may just have like a normal kind of convenience store shop without a restaurant. But a lot of times you will find where there's those Subways and whatever. And even if you're not going to eat, they don't care if you sit there.
Buc-ee's has a whole barbecue pit.
Yeah. Sit and, I am compulsive and compelled to want to keep going to get to where I'm going and not to wait. But I forced myself to sit for like 15 or 20 minutes at a time in the air conditioning and just, sip whatever I could sip.
Air conditioning is a really good point there too, especially considering your Death Valley excursion that you just went on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Mike gets the gold star for today because he, we talked about this last week, Mike, and when I was recapping some of my trip, but the long and short of it is, I pushed myself past the point of too much heat to where it caught up with me in the form of I stopped eating for like 3 days, and then even though I was drinking enough to not, be completely dehydrated, I wasn't eating, and, the heat just you when you go to bed and it's
It's a
90
vicious
something
cycle.
degrees and you wake up and it's 90 something degrees and you were hot all day, your core temperature never goes down, so that AC matters. Get inside for 15 or 20 minutes and it'll make you feel a million times better. And even if you're 20 minutes behind your schedule, whatever, if you want to make it that simple, the benefit in not killing yourself for the rest of your fucking trip is,
Mm.
important. So good point on that, Mike. Kudos.
Yeah. I I usually I usually like remind people, especially on the bike, because you have a limited range. You have to know your bike.
Yeah.
And stop well within your mileage. And the reason why you don't want to, I don't know, maybe newer bikes now you don't even have a reserve. It's kind of
Yeah.
just automatic. But you can't rely on the reserve switch to give you that extra half a gallon or a gallon,
Right.
because sometimes people forget to flip it back.
Yeah.
And when you run out of gas and you left it on reserve, you're out of gas.
Mm.
There
Yeah.
is no reserve. And you're like, oh, I forgot to flip it back.
Yeah.
So if you know you're 100 miles before you even need to go on reserve, that's when you stop. And
Yeah.
that's when you start looking for areas. And then what I'll do is I'll deliberately park as far away from the restroom and the vending machines as I can, to force myself to walk, stretch my legs,
Oh, that's a good point.
go in, do what I got to do, and then walk all the way back. Because if you park really close, you're going to get up, you're going to walk 20 feet, you're going to come back 20 feet. You're going to feel okay. And then 10 minutes later, you're starting to cramp up again. You're like, yeah, that wasn't enough.
Yeah, I was finding that like just getting up and walking, like if I sat down next to my bike and was just chilling on a curb and in the shade at a rest stop, and then got up and walked 15, 20 feet to a trash can, that it was like I felt like I was walking in quicksand. And that's when I started to notice like my mind wants to keep going and wants to get where we're going. Like my body is quitting around me
Yeah.
and saying like it shouldn't feel this hard to move that far. But so we've got, we're coming up on our hour in a bit here, and we've talked a little bit about the different types of rest stops and some of the the little few tips and tricks, and we kind of edged around some of the people, and we talked about there's a perception of truck stops. There's still a risk, you have to be careful, and I don't think anybody's listening to this show to be told how to go out and not get hurt in the world. So common sense is still what it is. But I found I tried to, whenever I could, park my bike where I could see it, if at all possible. I took off, valuables, things like that. I tried to dress it down a little bit, throw my jacket over stuff if I could, and try to keep it in like a
Oh, that'll
populated.
fool the thieves.
Yeah.
They won't look under a jacket.
Yeah, somewhere you could see it. Yeah, exactly. Just something like you think that matters, right? And that's like, I would try to do that kind of stuff. And I didn't have the biggest issue that I didn't have any issues with, any confrontations or anything sketchy like that. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge you have are folks that are, on the road themselves and maybe of no certain address at the time, that get a little pushy or kind of nose around, and you just don't know what you're dealing with. I like to think, especially after this last trip, when I'm trying to take a more zen approach towards things, you like to think, that person over there is down on their luck. They're me. I want to help them if I can. But, bottom line, keep your head on the swivel, nose around you. And, generally speaking, you can kind of, people tend to keep to themselves if you put something in a more populated area, I guess a more visible area.
Well, yeah, those bigger ones are going to.
Yeah.
You're going to have more safety by nature of it being
Right.
bigger, more police presence.
Yeah. Yeah.
More likelihood that the staff is going to shoo away, somebody who's unhoused and hassling people.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
making you feel unsafe. That's
Exactly.
another great reason to go to these larger places. I'm all
Yeah.
for support the little guy, not in the middle of nowhere though.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say where. Well, actually, it was I was in Barstow, and I had to walk from a gas station to back to the hotel, and I got Larry in a sling over, and it's dark and it's like sketchy, and like somebody drove by and started yelling at me a little bit, and it made me start to think like, where am I? Can I protect myself? And so for the advice for riders, if you can go to a big place, go to a big place. If you can't, pay attention to what's going on around you. Be prepared, and keep your head on a swivel and try not to put yourself in a situation where somebody can back you into a corner or something like that. And I'm to a fault want to help people, so that makes me an easy mark sometimes. But unfortunately there are a lot of people out there that are just trying to scam you, and you got to be careful of that too. So keep an eye on that. That having been said, there's some sketchy people at truck stops and rest stops, but the note I wanted to sort of steer and end on was I found that one of the greatest, I think, rewards of being out riding around was the people that I met. And I mean the sketchy people, the people from other countries, the people that you wouldn't normally bump into and just start conversations with. I had a conversation. I was joking with Scott a couple weeks ago, Mike. A guy walked up to me in like a Trump hat and some other kind of shirt and something that, not, normally the kind of person I would like, probably reach out and have a conversation to. And he just ran up to me at this rest stop and started telling me about his 71 trip to Sturgis and this bike that he owned and that bike. And as I'm talking to this guy, I'm like, I'm an asshole because I probably wouldn't normally talk to this guy because I don't like the hat he's wearing or whatever. But here we are, both sweating our asses off in the fucking desert at this gas station while he tells me about a motorcycle trip he took in the 70s, and it was like, it was very kind of humbling in that. And so I am being a little bit preachy about this, and that the people that you meet are really like just every cross section of life, from the guy I just described to families, watching dads who are contemplating going in the bathroom and shooting themselves in the head because they're on vacation with their family. That kind, that look, you see that guy like walk across the bathroom when he finally gets away from his wife and kids for 5 minutes. And he's like, I could walk in here or I could get in a truck out here and just go. But anyway, so I was a little preachy.
The other thing I was going to say is if you ever stop on the side of the road, like for a break, or like in the shade, whatever it is, if other riders pass you by, a lot of times they'll point at you. What they're doing is they're asking if you need help.
Yeah.
So if you're okay and you want to just make a phone call or something, just wave, let them know, because sometimes they'll turn around and come back. They want to help that much. So
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
sometimes people don't understand, like, why are they pointing at me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've actually
saying like, "Hey, are you okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm good, thanks."
Aren't you supposed to take off your helmet and put it down behind your bike to signal that you need help?
Yes.
See, look, even I know that.
But you could have problems with your bike. The bike might not run.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You could be broken down and have your helmet on the ground, but I'm saying a lot of times people will give you a point just as they ride by, fast, and be like, "Oh, you just stopped to make the phone call, or maybe you're waiting for somebody to catch up, or." You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had people stop. I stop not infrequently because of the dog, and so I'll pull over for a second. And Larry, I'm not Larry. People will stop and point, but I've gotten to the point now where I will actually, like, if I see or hear a bike coming and I'm pulled over, I will proactively try to do like a gesture that's like, I'm all good, like, hey, what's up? Not like, oh, help me, like, so you just let them know, like, you're, like that, you're throwing a shaka, whatever.
What is that gesture that is I'm all good? What gesture would that be?
The shaka.
Oh,
There we go. Yeah,
okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm all good.
Just pulled over to jerk it. I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Please pick me up so I can torture and dismember you and your family and loved ones. Yeah, it's definitely you gotta the smaller rest stops. I stopped at some really interesting places. I paid 25 cents to use the toilet in more than a couple of joints. You guys know how I feel about if you own a gas station and you don't have a public restroom, then you don't deserve the freedom that this country gives you, because why else are you there? I do know that I've heard from some business owners that some states, and California is no exception, make it so fucking hard to like run a business. Like, your water temperature in your bathroom sink has to be, a certain temperature, or else they can fine you for it. And it's like, people say, well, we're not gonna have a public restroom for that kind of stuff. So whatever. But
you don't worry about the water temperature at Buc-ee's, man.
Yeah, but I also had some really good last thing. One of the best experiences I had on my last trip was I was somewhere between Flagstaff and Kingman, and stopped at this rest stop. This was off the highway, off the highway place. And I think it was when I had gotten to the strip of Route 66 that goes between Seligman and Kingman. Anyway, this gas station I stopped in was off the road, and I had parked my bike right outside, and Larry was in the carrier, and I was just going inside to get water. And there was a bunch of locals I learned by standing there for a few minutes who were at the counter talking to the cashier, like so local that this woman was letting them go behind and check their own lottery tickets and stuff. So it was just really like a homey kind of. And we stood there bullshitting for a while. They were asking about the dog, and people kept coming in, like little kids and families, and every so often somebody would walk by and like walk up to the dog and be like, "Oh, look at that!" And Larry would be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah," and you'd see him jump back. So after a while, we just
Careful,
stood there.
he's a killer.
Yeah, and it's like they were just marveling at my security system and how he's so cute looking, and everybody wants to run up. He's got these pink goggles on, and then he's like, "Ah!" But it was so yeah. That moments like that can't happen if you don't go to rest stops. Definitely. One last item I will mention. We covered the pay toilets, but this is something that will happen to everybody. You will forget something. You will underplan. You will. Mike mentioned this. I wrote this note down when Mike mentioned the reserve fuel tank. No matter how crazy you are and obsessive compulsive about planning and details, and I am a poster child for that. You will just forget stuff. And if you're under like the age of 40 and you're listening to this, as you get older, it will be, no matter how much Nariva you take, you will still forget stuff more frequently than you used to. So, you have to leave a buffer. You can't, like me, I can't pack 2 of everything like I would like to do, but know the kind of stuff, like you were saying, I have a 4.5 gallon tank now. I'm still carrying a fuel reserve with me, because you just never know what's going to happen. So,
well, these larger places too are going to have a better selection just by the nature of the place. So, various different kinds of oil, different grades of oil, or a poncho, or who knows what it is.
Yeah, you will need
being
something.
a diabetic, stopping at those places was a hell of a lot easier for me because there was probably something I could eat that was, besides a pack of peanuts.
Yeah. You got to find something that you can put down. I was impressed with some of the food. I didn't get to eat as much.
Wall of beef jerky. That's what I'm talking about.
I found for when I was so hot and beat that I was like, when I was aware that I had no appetite, but that I had to try to eat because I needed energy, Subway was my savior.
It ain't great, but it'll sure do.
Yeah, simple ingredients. That, you know what else I got into was fries. Like I started stopping at rest stops and just get like an order of fries. And I had many to choose from. The winner from this last trip was Dairy Queen. I don't know if I have ever had Dairy Queen fries, but I highly recommend it if you get a chance. They're a little bit bigger than McDonald's, but they're not like steak fries. Definitely worth it. So
are they crinkle?
No, they're just regular straight.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Forget it.
And I'm still rambling about this, but the day I went to Dairy Queen, or I had to stop at a rest stop Dairy Queen, and I sat there and watched, and there was only like 4 people in this whole rest stop. It was dead. And there was like 38 people working at this Wendy's. And at first, or Dairy Queen, at first, my instinct was, how many fucking people do you need to run this place? Like, I have an operations background, so I see 25 people standing around and nothing happening. It seemed a bit overkill. But then as I sat there and watched, like, you never saw 38 people who worked at a Dairy Queen work together in greater harmony than this. And it was like they were talking to each other, they were making each other laugh, and there was one guy whose only job was to call the number and hand you your food. There's nobody in this fucking place, but every time he called the number, 152, and he did like a little thing. And it's like, here's a bunch of people just having the time of their life. And
Dairy Queen, if you're listening, Jay's available.
Yeah, if you're not here in this Dairy Queen in, Williams, Arizona, or wherever I was, like it's just, anyway, it's stuff that you see that is worth getting out and seeing. And rest stops are a great place to see it. And they're also a great place to get gas and take a piss. So
that's right. Eat here and get gas.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really glad that, I'm glad that we had a chance to talk about this. And I expect that we'll revisit this topic often on future shows, because I have this love affair, and Larry and I are going to try to. We found I'll send you guys the link if you want a list of like the country's best truck stops and rest stops.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Now we've got a map.
When we take our RV trip to Sturgis next year, we're going to have to hit those up.
Yeah, definitely. And Liz is like she's been like noodling about like a camper or something like that. She's like, "What? We could just tow your bike when we go places, and you can go off and do whatever you want." So that I'm
Yeah,
not.
heck yeah.
Yeah, that idea doesn't sound terrible, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, I'm a huge fan of rest stop life, and I really encourage you guys to get out there, and by that I mean our listeners and viewers. So with that, it's coming up on time here, guys. I am, as always, super appreciative to get together and chat on this lovely Sunday afternoon. Before we wrap up and head off into the week, what do you guys got going on? Anything exciting for the week ahead? Anything interesting coming up?
No, those of us with jobs,
Yeah.
we have to do that. We don't
Okay.
get to build choppers on a Tuesday afternoon.
Mike and I are retired.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll work for the rest of us then, I guess.
Yeah. I keep joking with my wife that one of us is going to have to get a job pretty soon.
That's right. Yeah, she's not rising to that bait, is she?
Yeah, actually, last day before we go, Abby, we were sitting down having dinner the other day, and as you know, my corporate career is no longer the most interesting thing in my life, and it pays the bills. But Abby asked me, she goes, "Well, if not that job, what is the job? What do you really want to do?" And I was like, "Nothing." I know that's not the
wants to
right.
do anything. That's the real problem.
Yeah, I know that's not the right message coming from the parent, but like I feel like I did enough. Like I'm all set with this. Is pretty good what I've got going on now. But Dude of IB Fantasy Camp can't last forever. So
That's right.
all right, gentlemen.
Mike, great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Good to see you guys, Mike, Scott. I hope that you have a fantastic week. As always, shiny side up, rubber side down, and all that good stuff. We will catch up with you guys next week, and hopefully we'll get the Moto Dog show off the ground. I got to make sure we can get Carlos on for that one as well. So more to
Sounds
come.
good.
I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Thank you as always. And with
You
the
too.
jingle, we'll take it out.
Take care.
Cheers, guys.
All right.
Cheers.